Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video installment here of the new metagame. Welcome to Shimmering Skies. Normally I have my camera on. I'm a little under the weather. I've just gotten my voice back, but I'm a little gross to look at right now. So no video for these, or no camera for that, but we are going to be going through, I believe, 10 or 11 of the decks that I've been experimenting with a little bit here and there as we've gone through kind of all the cards in the card file from the previous set of videos there, where we kind of give them each a rating. And this is kind of my week 2 or week 3 kind of take after playing with some of the cards a bit more. We're starting off with something actually posted online just the other day here. It is a Ruby Emerald kind of spell heavy or action heavy mid-range deck using the new Robin Hood, one card I initially kind of dismissed in the kind of review stream there, as it is uninkable and requires it to kind of live a turn before it actually does anything. While it still does remain true, and it can be a bit difficult at times to keep it in play, and it's definitely vulnerable to cards like Medusa and Brawl and all those things, especially the new Sisu, which is picking up in popularity, the 1/1 Sisu that kills a 1 strength character. All that being said, if it does live, it is very powerful, and one of the ways to make sure that you can have it quest and use its ability more than one time is kind of pairing it with a lot of the removal that Ruby and even now Emerald has to offer. We see Robin Hood paired here with Brawl, Dragonfire, and we don't talk about Bruno. Dragonfire being an outlier, one we haven't really seen see competitive play too much. It is a good use here in this deck of all the Dragonfire promos you may have accumulated over the various challenges for the past few months, and even in, as you can see at the bottom right, Las Vegas, September 21st and 22nd. I will be in attendance, just shy of a month away. There also is a European challenge, I believe, in the UK in Birmingham that same weekend, but I'm having that little icon up here for the challenge I'll be attending. Now, this deck has a lot of cards we've both seen before and not seen before. Diablo 1 and Diablo 3, they are kind of a really good inclusion in this kind of package, where you're going to bait out removal early in the beginning of the games, where if they don't answer a card like Diablo with Brawl, then you're going to run away with the game. And if they do answer a card like Diablo with Brawl, you're going to have a Robin Hood, which is going to stick around and play because they've had to use the Brawl they've had. Certainly, they can have more than one removal in their deck and in their hand. That's possible, certainly. But you have a lot of ways to help clear the way with Ursula, Deceiver, to be able to take actions out of their hands, any kind of spells, I should say, the songs, as well as bait in the form of Mulan, which not only works well with playing a lot of actions in your deck, we also get to play the Shift Mulan. One thing I've noticed with the format is a lot of people are attempting to make their deck much more challenger focused to help deal with Daisy Duck, a card we'll get to in some of the next few decks. That being said, Mulan kind of gets to hang out there as a 2-cost 1/3 that can be buffed, with a simple improvise, be put up to 4 strength to then challenge a Daisy, but it also sets up the Shift Mulan Elite Archer very well and able to clear boards, and you have a lot of bait, really, really good bait to help do so. So I've had experience so far where I've gotten to shift that card more often in this deck than I have the entire previous format, and it'd be quite effective. One card I think that a lot of us are coming to become more familiar with is Carabel. The 7-cost Carabel, a 5/6 with Shift 5, with 2 lore, and at the end of your turn, you get to choose an opponent, draw cards equal to you have the same number of cards in your hand. A card that a lot of people have been sleeping on for a bit. It was in the set review. I don't know if I rated it as highly as I may have today, but it's a playable card for sure. It's proven to be very similar to a Carefree Surfer Stitch that you can kind of play on an empty board, where getting that value is very good. Oddly enough, both Carabel, the 7-cost and the 3-cost, pair very well with Diablo, only in the sense that Diablo is going to make you discard a card when you shift it, so going down cards and then being able to re-up the same amount of cards immediately after being able to after playing the Diablo, a nice way to balance out that immediate card loss that you may gain. And often when they kill Diablo right away, you're kind of going down a card since you've invested, the 1-cost Diablo, the 4-cost Diablo, or 3-cost Diablo, and to end a card from your hand to shift on. That's 3 cards for your 1 card that you got back on their draw step, and the 1 removal spell they've gotten there. So being able to use a Carabel to draw a card, the 2/3, or the bigger one later in the game to then re-up to have the same amount of cards is pretty impressive. Maui, kind of a mainstay in Ruby. Only 3 in this deck because we do have Mulan Elite Archer, but it is a good way to have Rush, a good thing to have Rush in this deck. I do expect a lot of decks trying to kind of lock people out with maybe the Muses, a card we've seen crop up a bit here and there in the previous sets, but I do expect to see a bit more going forward in various other archetypes. In addition to the Robin Hoods, the Mulans, Carabels, and all that jazz, we have kind of our spell suite, our actions. We have Improvise, which is a nice cantrip, helps challenge, again, it makes Mulan trade directly with a Daisy Duck. It helps, a bunch of different things. A Maui finishes off a castle immediately. Mulan can then be 3 strength even when not shifted to then take out, a bunch of maybe snakes or rabbits or foxes. But we also have Hypnotic Deduction, Brainstorm for those magic folks here. It is a card that allows you to kind of set up a Robin Hood if you're so lucky to do so, if you don't want to just use your ink otherwise. But it's a very fine card. It actually increases your chances when you lead on a turn 1 Diablo to find a shift Diablo. Being able to draw 3, then put 2 back, digs you 3 cards deeper to finding that secondary Diablo to immediately shift it and increase that consistency. Brawl, and we don't talk about Bruno and Dragonfire, of course, the hits to really keep Robin Hood going and kind of make it really hard for your opponent to keep anything going on in play to stick around. All the premium removal spells for that, the color pair, and we really are pretty lax in our uninkable count. There's only 12. There's Diablos, Robin Hoods, and Dragonfires. Luckily, we don't have to include too many uninkables to make this deck work. We also have Pirate's Life. While it is nice to be able to consistently hit removal spells with our 12 removal on the deck, we do want some number of cards that are just regularly, proactively good when your opponent doesn't have a character in play. And a Pirate's Life doubles as a good card to essentially make Robin Hood quest for 4 when you flip off of it. And the 2 lore loss on their side can be a huge swing against the aggressive decks, as well as being a fine card to play for 6 in the mid to late game when you're trying to close out the game. But this deck's been pretty impressive. I've given it a couple go-rounds just through webcam gaming and things like that, and I've had been fortunate enough to have some friends who've opened a bunch of Carabels and things like that. I haven't picked them quite myself, which might be a little bit late on that. I think there are other variations of Carabel decks which have caused the price to increase. But it is a solid deck, and I do expect to see some variation of this going forward. It is something we've not experimented with, and Carabel giving Emerald a lot of card draw into the mid to late game is something we haven't had Emerald be able to do in a singular threat, as well as a large body. It does feel very much like an Amethyst card to me, in all honesty, which is a little odd, and it kind of harkens back to the set 1 Robin Hood in Sapphire, where that effect where your opponent has more cards than you draw a card. I was surprised to see this card in Emerald, to be honest, as well as the Remember Who You Are, just because it seemed like that was more of a Sapphire thing at that point. But rounding out the last bit of the deck, of course, the 1-cost Carabel, which is a shift target, something to help empty your hand when you were, playing out Carabels and wanting to shift onto it, but also just a way to help deal with some items, any kind of Fishbone Quills or Amethyst Chronomicons, anything like that you see. But solid deck. I'm excited to give this more of a chance going forward, and I would definitely suggest giving it a try if you have the cards. Carabel, I don't expect to maintain its value. I think yesterday, when recording this now, yesterday it was around $40 US, which I think it's settled down a bit since then, but it was a bit overhyped for a split second there. I think people are streaming other variations of Carabel decks and getting a lot of hype behind it. But hold off, big box release is coming. It is just around the corner. And yeah, definitely I want to explore more closely going forward and keep track of as the days go on. We're going to move along to everyone's kind of favorite mainstay here. We're going to be doing 2 decks each go around here. One people have kind of seen and are used to is Ruby Amethyst. This deck has kind of, what is dead may never die. This is really the Jund of this game. And while this deck didn't actually get too many upgrades, I would say, it is still a force to be reckoned with, and something to keep in mind that it will probably be pretty popular, even at the challenges, later, because again, not much has changed. People don't have to spend a bunch of money on new cards. Really, the cards I wanted to add to the decks are uncommons and commons. They're nothing really too spectacular. The combination of the Merlin, goat, rabbit, and crabs really helping out nowadays with the addition of, again, Daisy Duck to a lot of decks. Being certain that you can answer those cards early and efficiently is very important, and combining with perhaps one of the best cards in the set, I think I rated it very highly in my review as well, Cogsworth. 1-cost Cogsworth is an incredible card. Giving Rush to any number of characters, essentially with being able to bounce it and replay it. When your snake has Rush, you're essentially playing a Rafiki. Now, everyone remembers set 1 Rafiki. It had its moments there in the Ruby Amethyst control deck back in the day, but both these cards are inkable and very flexible. Being able to use a Merlin Crab to be played, buff 1 character, play a Cogsworth to give the Merlin Crab Rush, trade the Crab in, and then buff something else again with the Cogsworth, or with the Crab there, and then still have a Cogsworth left over, can make you be able to take down something as big as a Cinderella Stouthearted with just a 1-power character early on, just with the Crab. Immediate use of those cards is really hard to to get around. The only other card that really is new to the deck is the Library. While it is a card that I think is under the radar still a little bit, and I'm not certain how we should evaluate it fully, it is a card that has a lot of potential power. Being a 3-cost 1 to move to 8 willpower, 1 lore location, and it essentially makes all of your cards that die there draw a card, really hard to kill. 3-cost 8 willpower inkable is good enough in a lot of decks as is, even with just the 1 lore pip there. It doesn't even need an ability. I know a lot of different decks would kill for that kind of stat line on a location, but Library is very efficient in making sure that your cards like Churnbox Followers and even Magic Broom, which this deck is eschewing, it's not playing those Magic Brooms to essentially make them into draw 2s with the Library. It certainly can, but I wanted to focus a bit more on the mid game there. And while Flynn Rider, a card you see in this deck here, has not been included in most of the decks I've seen people playing Ruby Amethyst, I do imagine that there are going to be several Sapphire-based decks that you want to have Flynn Rider against. One of the big things with Flynn nowadays here is, through my own assessment and through decks we'll see in the next few videos there, a lot of them have started eschewing cards like Grab Your Swords and Baboom, mainly because of the fact that neither of those things answer Daisy Duck, and Daisy Duck is a way more hyped up card and one more played card currently than Flynn Rider. So Flynn Rider may have a bit more free reign when it comes to being able to gain 3 lore on turn 3 after being in play for a turn. That all being said, being able to make sure that you're able to fight those big Sapphire decks in the same efficient manner that you were before, with having threats like Flynn Rider and Sisu, is just as important, if not more so than ever. The Library will help against certain matchups there where, let's just say Sapphire Ruby, where they're trying to be prepared, you or Sisu out of the game. Having a big way to refill your hand with the Library, and a not really efficient way for them to answer it, since previously one of their main ways to answer cards like Queen's Castle, which we've shaved on one of, was the fact that their Harm, Flavor Sham, and Maui, when tag teaming, could take out the Queen's Castle itself. That was 7 power. Queen's Library has 8 willpower. That is a dramatic difference. Every point matters, whether it be on a character, on a location. Every little stat line there is very important and very, by design, attached to the card. I do expect we're going to see a lot of people gravitate towards Ruby Sapphire, unfortunately for me, due to the rise in popularity, I think, of what's going to be one of the better decks, which we'll take a look at going forward in Amber Steel. Got a lot of tools there, but just kind of giving a roadmap to some of the new cards to include in Ruby Amethyst going forward. We've had to give up a little bit more of the cards like Be King Undisputed. You see that one notably missing here. That does make you vulnerable to some certain new cards and some, mainstays like Tamatoa and the new Mufasa. However, one of the big things and reasons I don't think you can really afford to play cards like that right now at the moment is because of Daisy Duck. Daisy Duck, the decks that Daisy is in and Daisy itself kind of laugh at Be King Undisputed. It's uninkable. It makes me get to choose the least impactful character on my otherwise normally wide board and get rid of it. Be King Undisputed, I think, may have had its day in the sun the last format there, when there wasn't as much of an aggressive deck in the format. But as of now, I think it might be past its prime, and we're really looking back at ways to challenge early, where challenging is becoming much more important again. No longer are the days where the aggressive decks can use cards like Bucky, empty your hand, and then remove your board, and then eventually quest. They have to be questing pretty much throughout, so it merely makes cards like Cogsworth, Madam Mim Fox, and Maui even all the better. But this is my take here on Ruby Amethyst, one of the decks I do expect to see going forward, and really is, what is dead may never die. It's going to stay here for quite a while until the Merlin Crab, Merlin Rabbit, and the Mim package is either no longer allowed to be played, or until something better, which I hope doesn't, comes out in the future. But thanks for watching this one here. I'm going to wrap this one up. It's going to be essentially a very many shorter inclusions here, different kind of archetypes paired together, color pairs and whatnot. But stay tuned. Be right back with more.